in the older, richer systems, we have a crisis of engagement. Young people are bored frequently out of their brains, almost literally, and they are disappointed or disaffected or sometimes just disappeared from the formal schooling system. The crisis of disengagement in our systems points to a need for us to absolutely rethink how our learning opportunities designed. And I'm using that term designed very carefully. I'm not talking about delivering education as though it's a wrapped up package of curriculum and how things are taught, and all we do is deliver. We've got to get into the process of designing these opportunities with young people. Any innovator who's done anything serious has been acutely attentive to the user of their product or their service. They may listen, they may look, they may watch, but they're acutely attentive to the wants and needs of the users of the service. And that's what educators have got to do. The first is that the learner is much more in charge of her or his journey. The learner is demanding a much more personalised route through learning. And that goes right down now to, I would say, 10 or 11-year-olds. And this is not fairy stories. We see lots of examples across the world of school reinvention, and I'm talking about schools here, who themselves are creating personalised learning environments for learners to create their own goals, to plot their path through those goals. And the role of the reinvented school is to scaffold that, to create the framework, the tools, the materials, the human advisory support that makes that journey efficient, exciting, rewarding, and meaningful. Secondly, it's absolutely apparent, mobile devices, powerful digital tools will characterise our learning environments, and not as a silver bullet that solves all our problems, and not as something that defines how learning happens, but just something to be taken for granted like clean running water. That is essential to health. These new tools, which won't be seen as new, quite surely they'll be constantly evolving, are the clean running water of our learning. I think the third characteristic may well be what I will call a diffusion of learning experiences. So instead of constantly talking about the classroom and the school and everything happening in this building with often very high walls, I think that we will start to see learning environments where the school perhaps continues to exist. It has many important functions, but perhaps it's seen much more as a base camp for learning, where students feel grounded, feel supported, re-resourced, refueled, but that the base camp organises off-site learning, real-world learning, sometimes in jobs, sometimes internships in interesting organisations. Many schools, many other types of learning organisations are starting to see this design of opportunities for learning outside the school walls, but where the learning is brought back into the school for synthesis, for conceptualisation, for the acquisition of the core disciplines that can make sense of all of that as part of the learning mix. The school must stop seeing itself as the only repository and deliverer, the monopoly provider, if you like, of learning opportunities. The role of system leaders here is to start to create what I will call a kind of ecosystem of learning, recognising that there are cultural organisations, there are businesses who should not be seen as the devil in all of this, but rather seen as a partner with a huge role to play. And very importantly, there are social entrepreneurs, social businesses, social partners whose creativity in this field is absolutely exploding. The role of the system leader to create that kind of focus on learning and learning society is to start to enable the conditions where these people collaborate and work together, where the school recognises that learning goes on elsewhere and starts to build into its design for learning those providers, and they are seen as part of the whole process. That way, think of the example of iTunes. Steve Jobs has been very much on our minds because of his recent death. But his genius in part lay when he created the iPod, the iPad, and iTunes, was to say, iTunes is a kind of a platform, but thousands, actually hundreds of thousands of people create apps for it. And by creating the platform, he enabled a huge explosion of creativity to be made available to the user. And I think increasingly governments ought to think about themselves as a platform, enabling other providers to create different kinds of opportunities which can be mixed and matched and which excite and engage the user.